work session. We are 55 minutes behind, but we should be able to make up a lot of time out of this. It shouldn't take more than 5 minutes. I assume that you have all read and prepared for this personal work session. 3 attachments. The first attachment, which is strategic plan reporting timeline. As you know, that when you adopt a strategic plan, on page 38 was a schedule of reports from staff on our plans. The attachment you see on the board doc is just a little more refined in the version of what you have already adopted. And our esteemed chairman of the school board a couple of weeks ago already sent out in her chairman's note to the board members of the schedule for the report. If you have any question to ask at this point on the timeline for reporting on strategic plan. If not, we can move on to the next one. Next one has to do with the advisory committee, the report timeline. This is basically last work session, governance work session, that the board referred to the governance committee to work on adding to a basic timeline when the staff is supposed to respond to a citizen advisory committee as a reports by, and also when would we decide whether the board will have a further discussion on staff's responses committee reports. So a governance committee added a couple of items in September and October, that in September, by the end of September, staff will provide staff's response to the Citizen Advisory Committee reports, and board members will all have a chance to see that, and as well as advisory committee chairs. And during the month of October, each school board committee liaison should discuss the staff's responses with advisory committee chairs, and then let school board chairman know whether advisory committee wants to have a further discussion on staff responses, and chair will schedule as needed a discussion of those responses from the staff. Those were what a governance committee was recommending for board to adopt. Yes?
I have a couple of questions. Actually, first at the bottom, with those additions in...
Which bottom?
At the bottom of the screen. So don't keep sliding. Stop. So in February, how does that tie into what you've added above? The governance committee considers making recommendations to the board based on what?
Okay. At the last work session, governance full-day work session, the rest of this timeline was looked at by the board, and we agreed to the rest of the thing and refer back to the governance.
But my question is, does the February bullet refer to what's happening in October?
That is about committee restructuring, advisory committee restructuring. This one has a both. This timeline has a both. It's a restructuring of advisory.
Mr. Moon, hold on. Stop.
Okay.
So maybe Ms. Evans, I'm asking if the bullets that exist in October now have a correlation to the bullet in February. Is there a correlation between the action?
No, there isn't. So
they have nothing to do with each other.
Nothing to do with.
Okay, so what you're showing is that you have a board liaison who's discussing a staff response with the committee chairs. Then the liaison talks to the chairman, and then the chairman becomes a single gateway to whether or not there's actually a response. Is that what's proposed here?
Whether there will be a response, staff will provide responses to advisory committees.
But this lays it at the feet of the chairman as the sole person making the decision whether or not staff is going to respond?
No, whether board will have a further discussion. Board will schedule a work session to discuss staff's responses.
That's not what that says. It says if additional discussion of specific staff responses is appropriate.
Yes. For board discussion.
So you would have staff reply to a report that was presented to the board, and the board would never see it?
A board will see it by the end of September, as it has been the case for many, many years. Staff provides staff's responses, advisory committees reports by the end of September. And that is available to everybody. That's public documents.
But we're suggesting that staff is responding to a board, to a report that was made to the board, and that the board never discussed the staff response back to the committee.
What I'm saying is that staff's responses will be provided to all of us, staff, our board liaison and advisory committees, and our liaison will discuss during the month of October with advisory committee chair to see whether that advisory committee wants to have a further discussion about staff's responses with the full board.
That's not the takeaway that I get from that language
Okay.
there. Maybe other people have a different reading of that. And also, I don't know that having a staff report go back to a committee that has presented to the board without the board discussing how staff has responded, there is a missing piece there.
So I'll take your suggestion. Let's see where we go.
In my opinion.
Okay, so you want to make a suggestion? How we do this?
Yeah, I don't know how you have staff deliver it back without, I mean, it's the third bullet of the October bullets that is
There's a chairman making decision. That's where.
Is the chairman making the decision? And the question is just dump, a staff response back into a school board member's email, and we haven't discussed the impact of the staff response. I mean, it could be significant. It could be
Okay,
changing.
let's do one at a time. Let's do one at a time. Okay, let's just look at the September 2015. Staff is going to provide reports, staff's responses to advisory committee reports by the end of September. That's basically what it is.
But that's an email of a report.
No, it could be paper, actual staff's responses.
But is it at is this part of a work session? Is this part of the
that's not.
September work
No,
session?
that's not.
Right, so there's no discussion. There's no discussion in
Okay.
September, and potentially with what's contemplated in the third bullet, there's no discussion ever.
Correct.
Right.
If the advisory committee does not want to have a
But it doesn't
discussion.
say that it's up to the advisory committee to decide whether they want the discussion. That's not what that says.
Okay, advisory committee chair is going to have a discussion with the board liaison, and the board liaison will bring to the chair whether the advisory committee wants to have a discussion.
That's not what the third bullet says.
Okay, that's what we meant to say, the governance committee's recommendation, okay. Ms. Evans.
I just wanted to put a little bit of this into context as having been governance chair before. I see what you're saying. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Moon, but I think in the past when we have gotten staff responses, we typically have not then automatically put them on a work session. In some cases, the staff response is, yes, we'll do it, and there's no need to go further. And in some cases, there aren't that many recommendations. In some cases, there's no particular need. I don't recall us routinely discussing at a work session staff responses to the committee reports that we get in May and June. Is that correct?
That's my recollection as
So
well.
I think
No,
here
have
we
not.
actually kind of go a step farther than we have in the past, because we all get the staff response, we all see the staff response. If the board liaison feels that there's a need to continue and have a work session on it, the committee liaison goes to the chair and says, we really need to put this on a work session for follow-up, and the chair can do that. At the same time, what's not on here, but it's always clear to us that anyone who wants to put something on a forum to say, I want to discuss this, I think the board should be discussing this, at any time any board member can put something on a forum as a forum topic and say, I want to follow up with a recommendation or what the staff said. Is that correct?
Ms. Evans, the middle of what you said is exactly what I was getting to,
Yeah.
Was the point, is that's what we've heard from committees before, which
Yeah.
is we work all year, we make these recommendations, we make this presentation to you, then what?
And we hear
then
nothing,
that's
yeah.
it. And what the very middle of what you said was contemplating, okay, so now there's going to be a staff response, and the board liaison with the advisory committee chair discuss, listen, does whatever's in the staff response could be 3 bullets, or it could be 7 pages that's
Right.
material and germane and has to be discussed.
Right.
That notion, combined with what says on the third bullet, which is the chairman can decide whether or not there's going to be a discussion, doesn't portray what you discussed, which is the board liaison and the advisory committee chairman. If there's a belief that whatever's in the staff response is something that the board should discuss, it should be placed on our agenda at some point
So would
as
it
appropriate.
would
to
it take
discuss.
care of your issue if that third bullet said the chairman in cooperation with the committee liaison would make the decision? Would that help? Claire, I mean, I think it's understood.
Okay, Ms. Hines?
Yeah, I'm uncomfortable with the chair being the final decision maker on this as well, but I do think that it makes sense then, and I as chair would probably either say, yes, we need to talk about it again, or take it to a forum myself as chair to get the boards. I also don't like the idea of just the chair and one board member necessarily deciding whether the whole board is going to have another another work session about something. So I think what Ms. Evans is saying is, our usual process where any board member can bring anything to a forum to decide whether the whole board wants to move forward and do more work on something is the next step after that. Maybe we should say
I'm going
that.
to channel Ryan. He's not here, but his streamline and focus hocus pocus, that to me seems more convoluted to send something presented by an advisory committee as a report to the board gets it, staff is deigned to give a response, the response comes back, it goes back to the advisory committee chair, the advisory committee chair and the board liaison meet, there's a discussion with the board chairman, and then it goes all the way back to forum. I mean, I don't know what that looks like on a graph, but that's a mystifying.
Well, I would only say it's an effort to protect the time and the work of the board. That's all. So it is an extra couple conversations. You're right. But in an effort to streamline actually the work of the board, I think that's the idea, is have a little bit of a conversation first before the board automatically has another work session.
I would posit that inserting a forum at that point, it actually makes the board less efficient rather than more. So then you're back to 7 votes on whether you discuss it or not when you're already at a staff response. I mean, it's already at a heightened level because it's already been processed through.
Okay, hold on a second. I have Mrs. McLaughlin.
Okay, as someone who's on the governance committee, and we talked about this, it was my understanding in a very streamlined way that we have been hearing from our advisory committees that they feel like things sort of fall into a black hole. They make a recommendation, staff prepares a response, and sometimes there's a disconnect between what the committee was recommending and what staff response was. And that's where they feel like, and then it just died on the vine. So what I understood what we were trying to do from a governance committee recommendation was, and I'm kind of going to the third bullet, it was that the board committee liaisons in the second bullet provide the feedback to the school board chairman if there is any consternation on the part of the committee that they feel like this needs to be brought before the board. The third bullet that would then say, chairman will schedule work session discussion in November upon the liaison's request. So you've got a school board member who works with that committee. There's a reason we appoint a single school board member to be the liaison because, we're the conduit. And if we come forward and say to the chairman, there's there's this disconnect going on, and the committee is asking that the board review this disconnect.
Okay. The suggestion from Mrs. McLaughlin is to change the third bullet to state that chairman to schedule a school board a discussion upon request from board liaison to the advisory committee. Is that that's a suggestion? Any other suggestion, Ms. Evans?
I think that's a good suggestion. I think we, can certainly trust our committee liaisons to bring that request and be responsible about it, so I would support doing that.
Okay,
And then it would be understood that anyone else who felt differently, who wanted to bring something to a work session would have to use the forum method.
Okay, Mrs. Reed?
Yeah, I agree with the proposal as just been discussed, and I think it's worth mentioning, though, that it sounds so processy, this discussion, but what we're really talking about, I think, is if there's a significant policy issue that has been raised by these committees that the liaison and the chair feel the board should discuss. Right? I mean, it kind of reads as if, well, we're going to give the staff response, and then, something may or may not bubble up. But I mean, to the point, there is good work that has been done by these committees, and we sit here and we get the reports and we say, wow, 3, 4, 5, those are big issues. We need to discuss them, and then we go off and we never discuss them. So it's my hope that what we have said here by way of process will help us tee up and address some of those issues that have been raised by the committee and have come to the board. Is that right? Is everybody? Yes, I'm seeing heads nodding. Okay, thank you. So I agree.
Okay, anybody? Okay, Dr.
I just want to defend the staff just a little bit here. With regard to the committees, I do think there's some areas that we need to work on, but I think you all would agree with me that in most cases our staff works very closely with the committee, and in fact it's more of a collaborative effort between the committee and staff working on the reports, and we do see action as a result of it. And I could go through the committees and tell you which ones I believe have had that kind of relationship. Maybe it's not 100%, but in most cases, I think there is a good working relationship between staff and the committee.
Okay, there seems to be a consensus on changing the third bullet to state that, again, as I stated earlier, chairman to schedule a board discussion upon request from board liaison to advisory committees. All agreed? Okay, good. Okay, with that, I just want to state one thing just to clarify the past practice. The past practice, when I was a chair for 2 years, I'm sure that Tammy had done the same thing, and prior chairs as well, even though I'm not so sure for certain. During the month of September, we get staff's responses to the advisory committee reports, and they are disseminated to all board members and advisory committees as well. And I used to send the emails to our board members, who are the liaisons to these advisory committees, and ask them to please let me know. Talk to your advisory committees and let me know if advisory committee wants to have a discussion on any of these steps responses. For 2 years, none. Nobody has gotten back to me. So I didn't feel the need to schedule anything. So hopefully with this on paper, the board liaisons feel that they, its onus will be on the board liaison to actually discuss with advisory committees and let chairman know. With that, I think this portion of the work session is done with. I think we did. There was a consensus with a show of hands. Okay. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Moon. We have to go into closed meeting. The board will now make a motion to go into closed meeting to discuss and consider the employment and appointment of a specific public employee pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.23711A1. Do I have a motion? Mr. Velkoff, seconded by Ms. Reed. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. We will be back in this room by 10 after 2.